Hey guys, today we're going to be talking about supply and demand, and this is a very fundamental concept to grasp. Just a quick little video. But if you can understand the concept of supply versus demand, you're good to go. Because even though we're only focusing on the goods and services market today, we see that this law of supply and demand plays out in the labor market, in the financial capital market, in the foreign exchange market. Virtually every market in the economy as a whole is going to be affected by supply and demand. And so this is very important and sometimes confusing, and hopefully I can explain it in a way that makes it less confusing concept to understand. And so the law of supply and demand can be broken up into two different laws: the law of supply and the law of demand. The law of supply says that the higher the price, the higher of a quantity of a good or service that a producer is going to want to sell. And the law of demand says that the higher the price, the lower quantity of that good or service that consumers want to buy. And so we see the law of supply and demand takes those two and mishmashes them together in kind of an X curve like this. And so we see that the supply is a positive relationship based off these points. So here's the quantity demanded and here's the quantity supplied. I just made up a quick little supply schedule and a quick little demand schedule. It's what they call these little tables that analyze the relationship between price and quantity supplied or demanded. And for this little market, it's just going to be, what's a good product? Razors, right? No Shave November. By the way, comment on how you think No Shave November is doing me, whether you think my beard frames my face. But anyhow, enough of that. You can comment below if you feel like it. But anyway, this is going to be our market for razors, right? And so the higher the price, the less of a quantity demanded, right? That's the law of demand. And the opposite is true for supply. The higher the price, as the price goes up, this quantity supplied is going to go up. And that's where we get our supply curve and our demand curve on our X and Y axes, right? There's the quantity and of supplied or demanded, and here is our price. And so we see how these two are going to play out. Because the simple fact of the matter is, someone's going to have to give. The suppliers want to sell their products for the highest price that they possibly can. And for the higher the price, the more of a product that they want to supply and throw out into the market because they want to make the most amount of money. On the other hand, the demanders, well, they want to have as much money left over in their bank account after the purchase has been completed as they possibly can. So they would like the price to be all the way down here. Suppliers want the price to be all the way up here. So we see someone has to give. Someone has to give. Because if there's a surplus, which means a surplus is when there's a greater quantity supplied than a quantity demanded. If there's a surplus, that's not good. And if there's a shortage, when the quantity supplied is less than the quantity demanded, that's not good either. So they have to meet in the middle. And that is called the point E, equilibrium. We just call it E. But here's the point, and I'm just going to label it E, but that stands for equilibrium. This is the equilibrium of the market where the quantity supplied equals the quantity demanded, and that's a balance. And that's perfect. That's what we want. That's why when you go to the store, all the prices are set at equilibrium, because over the entire market as a whole, what that price is that you see on razors, right? That's our little niche market. The price when you go to buy razors and you see the price on that razor, that price is set because the quantity of razors demanded across the United States is going to equal the quantity supplied, the quantity that the producers are willing to produce. They say, okay, at that price, we'll produce this much. And the people say, all right, well, at that same price, we'll demand the exact same amount that you produce, the exact same amount that you supply. And that's how supply and demand sets the prices for, and we're just talking about, again, the goods and services market. So when you go to the store to buy products or services. Now, for every point along the supply curve and every point along the demand curve, there's a quantity. Price is going to change the quantity demanded along that curve and the quantity supplied along that curve. But sometimes there are factors other than price that are going to affect the demand curve and the supply curve. Other than price, factors other than price. And that is going to lead to something called a demand shift or a supply shift. And so we think about it, right? No Shave November. This is the supply, or this is the demand schedule, for October, when sales for razors are all doing all great. But now is November, no shave November. And people simply are not going to demand as many razors, right? Because everybody's now growing a beard. They're going to see what kind of a beard they could grow, and so they're not going to buy razors to shave. And so the demand for razors is going to go down. So now across the entire market as a whole, the numbers are going to go down. Instead of 5 for quantity demanded, again, these are just theoretical numbers. It could be 5,000, 5 million. I'm just putting these numbers in. It could be 4. And then for 2, 3, right? The quantity demanded is going to go down. And so that's how that's going to work. And so the new demand curve is going to reflect those points on the supply schedule, just like this. Okay, well now we have a problem here. And let me get a drink of water. Now we have a problem. And our problem is this. If the suppliers decide to sell at the equilibrium price, there's going to be a surplus because the quantity supplied is going to be greater than the quantity demanded over here. So the supplier is going to be forced to bring their price down to here, and that's why the prices of razors are going to fall when there's less of a demand for a product in the goods and services market. Demand for that good, when demand falls, the price is going to fall because the producers have to bring it down, and so the price level of that good goes down. We also see the quantity of demanded went down as well, right? And that was reflected in our demand schedule. Now, the same could be true for a supply shift. There could be a supply shift. Let's say that the price of steel went down, okay? So it's cheaper for the producers to make razors, okay? And so they're going to say, well, now since we get to put less money in, we're willing to sell more razors for every price point along the line. So now, instead of 1, this was going to be 2, and then 3, 5, and 7. It's just going to go up and up and up. Actually, let me change that because I think that's what that was before. 6 and 9. Okay, so now our new supply curve is going to be like this. Because the supply shifted out, right? The suppliers are willing to sell more of every good or service along the line. So now the price is going to go here. And this is good for the market because the price keeps going down, right? So that's we're happy as consumers, but also the suppliers are happy as well because that's where because they changed their, I don't know. I got lost in my train of thought. But anyhow, this is how supply versus demand works. And so we see that the law of supply basically in conclusion is that the higher the price, the greater of a quantity supplied of a particular good or service. And the law of demand basically says that the higher price, a less of a quantity of that good or service is going to be demanded. And these laws are combined. Somebody has to give, and so the point in the middle, equilibrium, is where we're at a balance. When the quantity supplied equals the quantity demanded. And now we also see that there can be factors other than price that will change. There can be shifts in the demand curve or shifts in the supply curve, and that will change the price, right? The price level was changing. And then after November, maybe the price goes, the demand curve shifts back up to where it was before. But now if it goes back to D1, the equilibrium is here. There's a greater quantity supplied in the market, but it was at basically the same. Actually, it's at a lower price. It's at the price that it was in November, even though the quantity demanded went back up to what it was originally. And so we see that's how supply and demand works, right? The demand curve can shift, the supply curve can shift, but ultimately everybody in the market is selfish. They want the most amount of money, but they have to meet in the middle. And the middle is the equilibrium. That's the balance where both sides are as happy as, or both sides are going to be happy. They have to have a compromise and meet in the middle. And that is what sets the prices, and that is what makes the market and the economy go the way it does. And so this is a very important concept to understand. And throughout several more of these videos, hopefully David or I will be able to explain this concept to you in maybe the labor market, in the financial capital market, in the foreign exchange market. So we could go on and on, but supply and demand is the most basic concept in economics. Please comment below or contact us at econopolicyresearch@gmail.com if you have any questions about this. But hopefully this explanation made sense.